Hey, see Sparky Fifer, 1250 AM, The Fan, from a mystery location in the state of Wisconsin. Even if I told you where it was, you wouldn't know. I'll tell you. It's in Harrisville, Wisconsin is where I am right now. Harrisville, Wisconsin is off Highway 39, like heading towards Stevens Point. It's a body of water, a bar, a tractor pull yard, a little building for get-togethers, and that's the extent of it. And a few houses and so forth, and not very big at all. Nathan Marzion from the cozy comfort of his brother's bedroom, with the fear of the deer flag, just returning from the Brewers Cubs game that he just witnessed the Cubs lose. How was the game? I mean, I know you're a Cubs fan, but outside of them losing, how was the game?
It was fun. It was fun. Always a good time to go to those games, and good to have a little bit of rivalry between the fans. It's not. I feel like Cubs fans aren't quite as obnoxious now that we're not as good. 2015 to 18 range. I'm sure. I went to some of those games. They were pretty obnoxious. And,
yeah.
Just
were there as many? Were there a lot there today? I didn't get to watch the game.
Yeah, nice. It was. It was probably anywhere between 40 and 60%, somewhere in there. Like, it was about half and half. Could have been more Cubs fans. Could have been a little bit more. I'm not really sure, but yeah. It was a good time, and everyone seemed to be pretty respectful towards each other. And we kind of both acknowledge that, like, neither one of us have the greatest team. It's just kind of a fun rivalry at this point. But yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, sounds good. Okay, so let's talk about the Milwaukee Bucks. We have not talked since free agency open, so let's catch up quickly here on the Green and Growing podcast, which, by the way, you can download anywhere that you would like on the Odyssey app or wherever you download your favorite podcast ad. And, of course, also on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page. We are live streaming right now on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page. As we speak. If you want to head over there and check out the videos we're doing this, feel free. Okay, Nathan Marzion, first things first, Chris Middleton's numbers, not exactly like you had predicted in the previous Green and Growing podcast, a little bit more expensive for Chris Middleton than originally thought.
It's a little bit more expensive, but it's not very far off. I was predicting the whole time 4 for $130, which is about $32.5 million per year, and he comes in at 3 for $102, which is $34 million per year. So not very far off of what I was expecting. And his salary this year is expected to be around $31.5 million. So that's about $9 million less than he could have had by just accepting his player option. So taking a $9 million pay cut this year, which helped us sign Brooke, and he'll get paid a little bit more as we go along here. I'm guessing Chris's contract will go something like 31.5, 34, and then like 36.5. And so, yeah, I don't have a problem with it. And when we get to the Brooke contract too, we'll talk about that as well. But Chris is going to be paid next year he's going to be about the 40th to 45th highest paid player in the league. That to me is completely fair because at his best, and that's what you have to look at. You can't just look at the number because the numbers have changed. The numbers don't mean the same that they meant 5 years ago, let alone 10, let alone 15. People look at Chris Middleton getting $34 million, and that seems like a ton. But it's not as much when you see that the best guys are making 50 to 60 million. And so all of a sudden you're like, okay, again, when you look at where he's actually ranked in the league in terms of getting paid, it's not that bad. And, when the choices are either pay him or you lose him for nothing, it makes it even more of a fine deal because it's like, okay, you're paying the dude like the 40th best player when really if they had to, they would have paid him like the 20th best player because they didn't really have a choice, but they're getting him for the 40th. If he's at his best, he's a top 25, 30 player in the league. Even if he falls off a little bit and is only a 15 something point per game guy, and isn't quite the same player. Okay, well, number one, you can still trade him. It's better than it's better than losing him for nothing, and then you lose the ability to trade him later. You just lose the asset. And yeah, number two, even having 15 points a game, someone that does that is better than not having that player at all and just we'll save the money. So it's like even if Chris is playing like the 60th best player and we're paying him like the 40th, and you're like, okay, he's a little bit overpaid for what he's giving you. It's still better than not having that at all. And so, and that seems like a very close to worst case scenario of him playing pretty poorly or something like that. Like the only way this really ends up being like a terrible contract is if he falls off completely or if he has, knock on wood, some, injury that really he doesn't play from. Like let alone play a little bit worse. If there's an injury where he misses 2 years or something or a whole year, okay, then that's a different story. But obviously you can't predict that to happen, and I don't know. There's really can't have too many complaints about this, and I'm happy he took a pay cut for this year.
let's talk about one other thing in the room here. The fact that that third year is an option, right? So
Yeah.
it's 2 years, and it's something to kind of behold here, because now let's get to the Brook Lopez deal and talk about his deal. He definitely took more money than I think Bucks fans were thinking he was going to take. And I'll be honest with you, I was getting a little nervous. I was getting a little bit nervous because I thought that deal would have got done right away with Middleton. And the longer that went, the more concerned I got that, man, maybe Houston is going to sneak and to get this due to the Rockets and they're going to lose him. And in my mind, I'm going, okay, well, I mean, Griffin and Nick Nurse, they were without a center and they still were pretty good defensively. And maybe this was part of the sell from Griffin was, hey, look, if we lose them, we can still compete defensively. We'll still be okay. Don't worry about it. Maybe that was part of the pitch of when they got him, that they didn't want to pay a ton of money for Brook Lopez and maybe they were going to let him walk. But at the end of the day, they were able to keep him. But again, for more than I think anybody thought going into this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was nervous too. I mean, there was a point, where, okay, it looked like Van Vliet was going to go stay with Toronto. And all of a sudden you're saying they're going to have a ton of money that they can potentially give him. And there's rumors coming out that, it started in the beginning of the day that they had offered reportedly two for 40. And you're like, okay, the Bucks can compete with that.
Yep.
Well, then it starts coming out that, they might actually go higher than that. And then you're starting to be like, oh, crap. Like, if they can go 25, 30,
Yes.
we don't really have a chance.
Yep.
And so it's not that we don't have a chance. The one thing that was keeping me a little bit like, okay, even if Van Vliet stays with Toronto, it might be okay, is we can basically give Brook as much as we want, but it would cost us going into the second apron. And I'm like, okay, I just have to trust that they're willing to go into the second apron a little bit. It wouldn't be by a ton. We can pay him up to $47 million or something like that. He's not gonna make anywhere close to that per year. So it's like, I knew if they're gonna go into the second apron, it'd only be by a little bit, and I would hope that they're willing to do that to keep him here. And so that was the one, which is basically what they're gonna end up doing. And they might not quite go over, but they're gonna not be under enough to be able to use that tax pyramid level. And I was like, I hope that tax pyramid level is not enough for them to be like, yeah, Brooke, you can leave. We want to be able to stay under the second apron and keep that. So that's what made me somewhat comfortable with it, is I'm like, well, no matter what the Rockets can basically offer, we can compete with it if we're willing to go into the second apron, and I'm hoping that we are. And it sounds like they were. It sounds like they didn't have any big problems giving him that money and spending up, which I like to hear. But yeah, it did get definitely a little nerve-wracking there for a second, just not knowing if Brooke was going to be back. And I think people need to use this as another example of like keeping your guys. I know people want to trade and people want to make changes and people want to upgrade and do all that, but keeping your good players here is a win in itself. And that's something you need to celebrate. It's not something that we're just like, oh, okay, they stayed, cool. No, they could have left. They could not be here. It was decently likely that Brooke, we could be looking at this right now saying we don't have Brooke. What?
Can I just say something? I love you, but having done the Big Show for so many years on the radio, this just reminds me of Packer fans. This is Packer fans all over, because when NFL free agency would hit and Ted Thompson would do nothing in NFL free agency, but we'd extend Driver, we'd extend Jordy Nelson, we'd extend our own guys. And then Gary Ellerson and Leroy Butler would be like, see, Sparky, that's their free agency. Yes, they didn't get a new guy, but they kept their own guys going forward. And that's how they use free agency versus these other teams. They spend all this money on a guy, and then that guy doesn't work out once he signs. And essentially for the Bucks right now, it's kind of the same thing where, okay, our free agency is keeping our own guys and giving us a chance to kind of go back and compete for another championship versus rolling the dice on somebody else and that you don't know if he's going to fit or not with what you have.
But the NBA is different. The NFL, you can lose a guy, you get that money to spend elsewhere. The NBA,
True.
You don't. That's where I'm talking from this. If we were under the cap and we could lose Chris and use $40 million on someone else, I can very much see why people might be like, let's roll the dice, let's do that. But at this point, again, our choices were they stay or they're not here. And people kind of just take them staying for granted as just like, oh, they're running it back. Oh, great. And it's like, well, the other choice was they could leave and we could just not have them. And we'd all sit there and be like, well, we're not even a title contender anymore. We lost Brooke or we lost Chris. And it's like, one of those is a lot better than the other. I'd rather run it back with a group of good players that we've seen win a title, even if they're not the number one contender, even if they're not getting a ton better from last year or anything like that. I'd rather have that core and have that team than not have it and be looking at it like, well, we're going to look a little bit different because we lost Brooke Lopez, but we didn't get anything else. Like, you have to be willing to, like, because I'm sitting there going, man, everyone's like, it's just funny watching everyone on Twitter worried about Brooke Lopez leaving. But then as soon as Brooke Lopez signs, it's, oh, well, we're just running it back. And it's like, but we were just worried about him leaving 5 minutes ago. We need to celebrate that he's here. Like, we need to celebrate that we got to keep these guys. It's not a given that, especially for the Milwaukee Bucks, it's not a given that good players are going to want to stay here. And a guy like Chris Middleton is going to take a pay cut to stay here for this year. Like, there's just a perspective on it that I feel like so many people don't have. And it's like, I'm not saying you have to sit there and root for them to never make change and never make any trades or anything like that. But you have to be happy that these guys are here because they easily could not be.
Okay, let's talk about something else. Again, we go back to Brooke Lopez's contract. We go back to what Drew Holiday has left on his contract and Giannis. Right now, this thing is lined up for 2 years. You have the upcoming season and one more. And then after that, this team could be completely blown up and completely changed. Because then Middleton, Holiday, Lopez, Giannis, they all could be gone if they so choose to be gone, or if the Bucks so choose to be gone as well. That is going to be something to keep an eye on next summer. You know, if they run this thing back this year, Nathan, and they fall short in the playoffs again, then you have guys with, 1-year deals or 1 year and an option or whatever. Then maybe you can get into the trading one of these guys to make one last run at it and give you a possible star player to kind of go forward with next summer, not this summer.
I've got a juicy plan, I guess. Not even a plan, but if things go south next year, if let's say we don't make it to the because I think if we make the finals and we're competitive and we're close to winning the title, I'm not sure they're going to go out and try to trade everyone or trade the main pieces. You might make small changes, whatever. But if they don't get, let's assume they don't get to the finals, and you're at a point where you're like, okay, we probably don't want to just run it back with this team again.
Yep.
And they've had a year with a new coach, and the new coach still couldn't get them over the hump. Or not over the hump. They did get over the hump, but just couldn't get him back to the finals. On draft night next year, they will have two big, as you kind of mentioned, they have two big contracts that will be expiring the following year, being Brooke and Drew. Brooke for $24 million and Drew for about 37, 38. I don't even know how much it is. So you can trade one of those to a team that is bad, trying to unload a good player, just trying to get an expiring contract back. And on draft night, they will have 3 tradable first-round picks. 2024, which they have, but they can't trade right now because it's a swap. But you can trade on draft night once we know what pick we have. So that 2029, which we can trade right now if we wanted to, but I mean, right now haven't been looking to trade that a ton. And 2031, because now we can trade 7 years out. We traded the 2030 second this year. We could trade the 2031 first next year. And they could throw in pick swaps too. So 2 big expiring contracts, 3 tradable first round picks. The window is there absolutely next offseason for them to pivot out. And this is another thing that I think people see these contracts happening and they just assume, well, the Bucks are going to be the exact same for 3 years, whether whether things go good or bad, it's just going to be the same team. No, there are avenues to get out. There's always the ability to make trades, but next year, especially given that they're actually going to have a few assets to, tradable picks to use. Not to mention I think Grayson's contract is up next year. So he's probably going to be off the books next year. So that'll open up a little bit of space, but the avenues are that avenue is there. If things don't work this year, that you can say, and I mean, let's just say at that time that this is just hypothetical, but let's say Dame's still in Portland at that time and they're still trying to trade him at that point. And it's you could all of a sudden get offered Drew and picks and something else to get Dame. And that's a more enticing offer than what they have right now, which is Drew and 1 pick and really nothing. So it's
yep.
Okay, then you start to actually have a package to put together to get one of these guys, because that Drew contract would be expiring at that point. Whereas if Portland took it on this year, they have 2 years to deal with it. Where next year they might be more enticed to say, hey, we'll take on the expiring contract to Drew, with 2 or 3 picks attached. So it could be Dame, it could be any other player that is on a bad team that is available, and that team wants expiring contracts and picks, and boom, you have a package there. So. That's my thing to keep an eye on a year down the road if things do go south. Obviously, if they win, if they either win the finals or are in the finals or something like that, we're probably going to keep those guys. It's probably going to be just keep, ride it with this crew. But if they don't, the avenue is there.
Yep, I love it. All right, let's go to topic number 2. Jay Crowder is back, as is Robin Lopez. That news breaking earlier Monday before we are recording this. What is it, 6 o'clock here on Monday night, Central Time. So let's start first with Jay Crowder. Crowder is back. Now, I said before, I'm good with Jay Crowder. Not coming back to me, he looked old and slow, and I understand everybody wanted him to play. Part of this, I think, from the Bucks' perspective, is you give up all those second-round picks and everything else in order to get this done, and did this dance all year trying to get this whole thing figured out, to let him leave without ever getting him into the postseason as much as he should have been and really see what he's all about would have made you look horrible and left a lot of egg on your face for doing that and then not getting anything out of it. So this is a one-year dance now that we come up here at Marzion with Jay Crowder. But as far as I know, we still don't know the numbers on Crowder.
Yeah, we don't know the exact number. I would guess it's somewhere around the 5 million-ish, more than a minimum, but not quite, 10 million or anything like that. So I don't mind it. We got to a point, and this happened, we signed Crowder after we got Lopez. Once Lopez signed, it was kind of once that was for 24 million, it was kind of a choice of, okay, we either don't keep Crowder and we keep the TPMLE, which is worth 5 million to use on someone else.
That's taxpayer mid-level exception for those of you that don't know his letter terms. Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. So the $5 million there to use on someone else, or we just use it on Jay Crowder and lose that. So you're kind of essentially asking the question of, is Jay Crowder better than anyone else we can get for $5 million right now? And honestly, it's very reasonable to say yes, he was. Like, just as a player for the Bucks and what they need, I'm not sure you're going to go out there for $5 million and find someone that has the potential to fit in that role the way Jay Crowder does. Now, we didn't see it last year. I know that he wasn't very good, but number one, they gave up 5 second-round picks for him, so I didn't think they were going to want to just punt that away and just say
stupid. Yes.
Yeah, but there is an argument to be made, and I'm not necessarily making this argument, but I don't mind it because give him a full year, give him more time
camp.
More time to get acclimated to playing in the NBA again, and maybe with a new coach and everything. Maybe it looks different. Maybe he's more useful. Maybe we look at it and say, okay, he actually is a pretty decent player. And if we can get anything decent out of him, if he can be in the playoffs, if he can be, give us any type of meaningful minutes, then I'd say it's a better choice than using that $5 million on some outside guy that we're probably gonna have no idea if he's gonna play. So I didn't mind it. And once we signed Lopez, I kind of was like, we probably should just bring back Crowder. I think he's better than any other option that's out there. There weren't guys out there that you were just like, we need to go get him. He would be perfect. Doesn't really happen for $5 million. So I don't mind it, and I want to see how he looks, having the full year.
Your point on let's give him more time to get in shape, after not being, I'm not saying he wasn't in shape, but maybe not basketball shape. You can work out and till you puke and do all that other stuff that apparently was going on, but that's not the same thing. And then getting into a situation with Bud where, for whatever the reason, Bud didn't think he was a fit to play in the playoffs. And as I said then, and I'll say now, I didn't necessarily disagree with Bud
wait, hold
at
up,
that
hold
point
up.
either.
We got Malik Beasley.
Yeah, you and I, we got Malik Beasley to the Bucks.
Yeah.
Well, okay, good. So how did they get Malik Beasley? He's a free agent, I believe, correct?
Yeah, 1 year, $2.7 million.
That's cheap. All right, so talk about Malik Beasley and how he fits into what the Bucks are trying to do now. Good job. Yeah. Breaking news during Green and Growing. Yay, us. Okay, go ahead.
So, yeah, I mean, I like him. Decent three-point shooter. He's always been an okay, solid defender, kind of a wingish guy. And again, for a minimum near guy, all right. I mean, that's about as good as you can do. A guy that can shoot a little bit.
He's underperformed. Compared to expectations people had from Malik Beasley coming into this league, he's not lived up to it.
Yeah, but like last year, 11 points a game, 35% from three, and played decent defense. For $2 million, I'll take it.
Sure. Yeah, no doubt. So Malik Beasley, an ad. But help me understand what exactly is going on at the guard position right now. So how do these guards now line up with Malik Beasley as part of this? Because now you've got Grayson Allen, Pat Connaughton, Beasley, Holiday. Am I missing somebody else at the guard position outside of those four? Oh, Marzion Beauchamp, I guess.
He's more of a
would
wing.
be your fifth guy, I guess, that could rotate in. But those are essentially your guards at this point. And then the other one that we were going to get to before the Malik Beasley news, Robin Lopez, according to Sham Charania, back, it looks like, with the Milwaukee Bucks as well. And I was all about Robin Lopez. I've brought it up on this podcast before about why I bring back Robin Lopez to get yourself a backup big with Brook Lopez. I know he doesn't score a lot of points. I understand that. But he still gives you a big body that you can use as fouls. He can rebound the basketball still a little bit. He can provide some type of physical toughness inside. And I think that's something that Adrian Griffin probably wants to really focus on defensively, is being more physical than probably they've been in the past. So I don't mind the Robin Lopez thing. I know a lot of people are like, oh, Robin Lopez stinks. Why the hell did they bring Robin Lopez back? Okay, fine. Maybe. But he was fine the last time he was here. And to get him back into that locker room, I think is a good thing too from a chemistry standpoint. So I'm fine with that. Again, there's no way they paid Robin Lopez a lot of money. So Robin Lopez on a vet minimum, more than likely is my guess. That works out for me just fine.
Yep, another guy that, I think we needed the depth at the position. I'll take it. There wasn't a ton of options out there that were really going to be much better. He's been with these guys. He's going to get along with them very well and everything.
Right.
Obviously has Brook on the team. But yeah, I didn't have a huge problem with it. It's funny to me. Every time I see Robin Lopez, it's just him and Brook together. I just start laughing because I'm like, it's going to be a funny season. But yeah, I didn't have a problem with it.
So what's left? So they got Malik Beasley. They got Robin Lopez. They bring back Crowder. They bring back Middleton. They bring back Brook Lopez. They got the Lopez brothers back. What's left, Marzion? What's left for the Bucks to do here to get this whole thing said and done? Is it still looking for a forward maybe? Is that still an option? Is it a point guard that they're probably going to need to get here? I would think point guard would make the most sense of what's left. A point guard makes the most sense to probably use some of your money that you have left to go get to have somebody with Drew Holiday, considering you lost Javon Carter to the Bulls.
Yeah, so at this point, assuming Robin is for like the minimum and Beasley's 2.7 million. I mean, they really are. They have 2 roster spots left, probably, given that they're going to sign Andre Jackson. I think they're going to sign Chris Livingston, the 2nd-round pick, and so at that point they're at 13. Thanasis would put him at 14, and they'd really only have 1 spot left.
So you have one. So you have to. It has to be a point guard then, right?
Yeah, I would think so. Just a point guard on a min, So that's what it would probably have to be. I'm just looking at this and trying to figure out how. I think what the Bucks did, because I'm trying to figure out how they can sign Malik Beasley for more than a minimum, and I think they must have given Crowder. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out how they could give him this money, but I guess we'll find that out.
So they still have the mid-level exception, right?
I would think they do, because how could they sign him?
So couldn't they have split it, Beasley, and then be able to get a point guard now to go to the other side of that mid-level and split it in half almost? Because you can split that, can't you? I mean, you're the CBA guy far more than I am, so
you can split it, but I just don't know how they have it in the first place. Because if they signed Jay Crowder for, let's just say, $5 million,
right,
and they have and then they have Robin Lopez on a minimum, and I guess they could then but they can't. Okay, so to then add 2 guys in there for $5 million. Yeah, the Crowder deal would have to be for $4 million bucks. So the Crowder deal for $4 million. They signed Robin Lopez for a minimum at about $2 million, and that leaves them with 5 point something, or that leaves them with 5 point something to work with.
Right.
With 2, they could just sign 2 spots. This might mean that Thanasis isn't back.
No chance.
Because I'm serious. This might have to.
Well, he's out of the league then, because he's not going to go anywhere else.
Unless they could use the rest of it on him.
Oh my God.
And they wouldn't get anyone else. So, because that's the thing.
Again, it's not my money, but good God.
If they are using some of that, I'd have to assume, given that it's more than a minimum. I think it's more than a minimum. Yeah, it is more than a minimum. And hold on, you talk for a sec while I look up minimum salaries, because it depends on the.
That's fine. I can feel this. No problem with the Thanasis thing. This is the thing. Okay. At some point, somebody has to have the conversation with Giannis of, all right, dude, look, this is where we're at. We can bring back your brother. That's cool. But in reality, he's a hustle guy, a cheerleader. That's kind of what he is. Instead of having the hustle guy, the cheerleader, I need a veteran backup point guard for Drew Holiday because I don't really got anybody else. I mean, you can bring up the ball. We don't really want to do that anymore. Middleton can bring up the ball. I don't really want to do that anymore. I don't want to play Drew Holiday a ton of minutes either. I need somebody that can play 12 minutes or so a night at that point guard position. I need that roster spot. I need that money to get a backup point guard. I know Thanasis is your guy and the whole deal and all of that. We've had him here forever for you. You got 2 years left on your deal. I just need a point guard this year. Are you good? And then see what he says. And then just be straight up honest with him. I mean, I just don't see them not bringing back Thanasis. I guess I would be shocked because dude's not getting a job anywhere else. I can't imagine.
Okay, so I take it back. They might this might actually be a minimum deal for Beasley because 2.7 technically it would only count as $2 million on the Bucks books, but at 2.7 would be the minimum I think for a player for his age. So I think he is on the minimum.
A minimum and Malik's a minimum then.
Robin's a minimum and Malik's a minimum. And that means they aren't using that tax pyramid level. They don't have that. They're just signing minimum guys. So they can sign 2 more minimum guys. They can sign Thanasis and someone else. If that's what this is happening.
Right. Yeah. That would make more sense. Okay, so now they need a backup point guard. I don't even know who's out there necessarily at this point that they could go get. But I think that is obviously the next position that they have to consider is a backup point guard for Drew Holiday.
The dream that I don't think is going to happen, I just don't see him being on a minimum deal, would be Ayo Dosunmu. But I don't see it happening. He's from the Bulls. He is kind of like plays like Javon Carter, but he's bigger, which is what you need, and
they chose Javon Carter over him essentially.
Yeah. I mean, he's younger. He's not quite as proven, but doesn't shoot the ball quite as well as Javon, but defensively gives you what Javon kind of gives you of like pressuring a guy and gives you good defense. I liked him when he played at Illinois. He's very young still because he was drafted in 2021, but he's longer. He's a bigger guy. So that's who I would want. I think that would be the best case scenario. Other than that, really, just get any point guard here. Someone that, if all else fails, break in case of emergency, boom, you throw this guy out there and they can at least handle the ball, run a little bit of offense.
I saw somebody on Twitter joking around, and I'm going to emphasize this. It was a joke that somebody suggested on Twitter. But it got me to thinking, Nathan Marzion. By the way, you can download the Green and Growing podcast on your Odyssey app, anywhere you download your favorite podcast at, streaming live on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page. Normally Monday and Thursday evenings is when we record this. Would you consider, and I haven't looked at the numbers, Holiday for Zach LaVine? Holiday and picks, maybe, for Zach LaVine.
Really quick. I'm sorry. I'm kind of dumb. It does say on Woj's post, 1 year, 2.7 million minimum. I just kind of read million and minimum and put them into one word as million. So it is a minimum, just to be clear.
Minimum deal for Beasley. Fine.
Yeah. You said Holiday for LaVine.
Yeah. Holiday and picks for LaVine. Essentially, they have no Lonzo Ball. So they have filed for the 10 point something $1 million injured player exemption. I don't know if Lonzo Ball is ever going to play again with his back injury that he has. So that may be done. So then it would be Drew Holiday, DeMar DeRozan, and then Vucevic, who they just paid an obscene amount of money to bring him back at this point. And it would give them some flexibility because, as we talked about, Holiday essentially is done in 2 years. The Bucks would get more of a score than what he gives them. The only issue with that, to my point, would be who the heck is going to run point guard for this basketball team if they were to do something like that? Obviously, Grayson Allen could go to the Bulls. That would be hilarious. I would love that. That could be something where to get rid of him to let LaVine be that guy. They would definitely have to figure out how to get a point guard. Was that something you would consider? Just curious. It was a joke on Twitter somebody was making, but it got me thinking that I didn't think it was such a horrible idea.
I'd be more interested if we got both LaVine and Caruso for Drew and Grayson or something like that. Yeah. I'm not really interested if it's like, okay, we're giving up Drew as our best asset and we're getting back LaVine as the best asset and nothing much behind that. So, because as you said, I know Drew's not really the definition of like a true point guard, you know, and he hasn't played like that for us. And we kind of want to see him play a little bit more at shooting guard, given that it just seems like it's more of his role. But he can definitely run the offense and stuff, you know, a good amount. And has in the playoffs, he's averaging like 9 assists per game. I mean, that's not something Levine's going to do.
Right.
And I've just never been super high on Levine. I know he's kind of smoother player. People like him because he's, you know, I don't know. His game is a little bit prettier. Like people will say he's better than Chris Middleton just because his game is prettier than Chris Middleton's, but I don't think that's the case. And I don't know. I'm never in love with those guys. It was kind of the same with Beal, where I was a little hesitant because I'm like, I don't know how much I really like Beal. I know he can do some things that, you know, offensively that like Drew can't, but I'm still not completely sold on how much he really impacts winning. Their defense isn't very good. Obviously, Drew's a much better defender than either of those guys. And Levine's played, I think, in 5 playoff games in his career. So how really are you supposed to know what he's going to be in the playoffs? We don't. Now, we know Drew's bad offensive in the playoffs, but he at least gives you the defense. But, like, yeah, Levine's not someone you can sit there and trust in the playoffs because he hasn't really been there. He hasn't been on really many winning teams, which, again, is the reason why I'm like, like, is he a guy you just throw in there and he makes your team better? I'm not sure, you know, and Drew to me is much more of a winning player. I don't think you get much better making, or I don't know if you get better making this trade. You just get different, and I don't really know if I want that.
Yeah,
and I don't want to just get different. You know, if I'm trading good players on our team, Drew, Chris, etc., I want to make sure there is something I'm getting that's like a for sure. And at least that's what you like with Beal. I was kind of like, okay, I'm sold that if we trade Drew to get Beal, we are getting a much, much better offensive player in the playoffs than what Drew's given us, you know. And Levine, yeah, he's probably going to be better, but to me, it's like it's not enough to necessarily overweigh everything else Drew does, and just we haven't seen it from Levine, so that's why I'm just like this doesn't seem like something that makes us for sure better. It's just kind of like they're different.
He is Nathan Marzion. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. Follow me at Sparky Radio over at 1250 amthefan.com. Thanks for checking out another edition of Green and Growing. We'll go over more in depth the rest of the NBA and what happened. We record again on Thursday night, and between now and Thursday night, who knows? Maybe there'll be some more Bucks news as well as we get past 4th of July and so forth. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a good one. Happy 4th. Toodles.